There is nothing wrong with your radio.
Do not attempt to adjust the volume.
We are controlling the broadcast.
For the next hour we will control all that you hear.
You are about to experience the knowledge and insights of the Media Mothership.
Hey, welcome to Media Mothership, broadcasting out of Edge Radio Studios in Hobart, Tasmania, Nipaluna. I am Dr. Craig Norris, PhD, joined by B.A. Zeke. Hey, B.A. Zeke.
Hey, what up?
Our fans are leaving. Outside, we've had this great audience outside our studio, and unfortunately, they're on their way out now. But that's because if you can follow us live, if you follow our stream on YouTube or Twitch, just search for Media Mothership, and feel free to post a message on the chat service there or SMS us.
The SMS line is 0488811707.
So that was 0488.
0488811707.
Great, I've written that down too. And look, a huge personal call out to my parents today, who are having their 50th wedding anniversary. It's a rare privilege of Media Mothership to be able to shout out the fact that the origin of our mothership is having their wedding anniversary. That's a mixed metaphor, is it? Anyway, huge shout out to my parents. Happy wedding anniversary, guys. Great for getting through those 50 years. So today's show, we're going to be talking about the next 5 minutes of House of Haunted Hill. We're up to minute 15 to 20, and the repulsion level is going up a lot.
It is. There's a lot of scares coming up.
We have our first retraction to make of a news story.
Yeah, that's right.
From last week. So I feel like that's a huge milestone for the show. We're already disseminating fake information. And we're going to look at some transmedia narrative extension work going on in FIFA 23. Because, the thing we've been focusing on with House on Haunted Hill is the way it generates fear. Those 5 stages of fear. We're going to look at some reports on Facebook talking about the fear which pervades kind of like neighborhood watch messages on Facebook and some data that's around that. Then we're going to jump in. Last week we did the story of the meteorite story, which was a fake news story from Lauderdale High School. And now we're going to do a real news story about rocks in Tasmania. But saving that till later. And how are Tasmanian rocks connected to America? I guess is the teaser there. And that'll be the show. So, so much content today. It's going to be exciting. Let's start with some news first with a little sting that I'll play from the computer. Thank you, Zeke. All right, yeah.
Good sting.
Bluesy vibes. And great. Yep. So here we are in the Mothership Studios here at Edge Radio. I'll do the intro again because it's been so long. Attraction warning. So last week we ran a story which I thought was so exciting about Bruce Willis selling his digital likeness rights to deepfake company. Now, interestingly, this is the second story about digital media that's been linked to Bruce Willis in my lifetime. Goes broader than that. I got an honours student to do their project on their honours project. It was Jack Ellis. He did his honours project on the digital ownership rights of media music. Right? Do you own the rights to your music? And one of the things that triggered that was a story attributed to Bruce Willis that he was complaining that he can't bequeath his iTunes music library to his children because it's a digitally owned good, and it's not like your record collection where you can bequeath that. So that ended up being a fake story, but it was a really good story to talk about how there's concerns around your ownership of digital material. So the one we have to retract, though, is the story around last week that Willis had sold his likeliness to a deep fake company and had already done a commercial with it. Ended up being a misreading. We just kind of piled on the media bandwagon for that. It was one of these... I feel like we really came of age as a media source, though. Like, once you join your first media bandwagon, you tick that box. It's like, yeah, we've done that. So at the award ceremony this year, or next year, I'm sure we'll get invited to.
Hopefully. This
will be our acceptance speech about joining the media bandwagon of jumping on a story that was misrepresented, identified. So the real story was, yes, Bruce Willis had been... talking about AI work, and this story then went wildfire, and the Bruce Willis people issued a statement afterwards denying that he had, in fact, not sold. So they denied that he had sold his digital likeness rights to a company that makes AI deepfakes. So they denied that, never happened, there's no partnership. There's no agreement with Deep Cake Company, which is what a great name, right? Deep Fake Cake, and Willis. There was no permission to do anything with his likeliness, and so forth. So that was a real fizzer. It basically just talked about how it was the case of an initial report from the Telegraph news source that raised... So the original article was in Telegraph, and it raised the possibility. So in the article, it just raised the possibility in the future that Willis could be deepfaked. Bruce Willis could be deepfaked. And then that speculation became the story for some reason. That speculation that he could be deepfaked became he has been deepfaked, and that became he has sold his likeliness rights.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is, so the ad, from my reading of this article, the ad did happen, but that's all. There's no other agreement.
Yeah.
So they did an ad in Russia. I think it was a telecommunications ad or
yes,
something like that.
Yes, that's right.
Year.
Yes.
So they made an agreement, the estate of Bruce Willis and Bruce Willis himself said that, yes, you can make this, but there was a once-off agreement because you can't actually make an agreement in, I think it's perpetuity or whatever, to sell off your facial rights or whatever for an AI. You have to actually sign off at every single time that they want to do something, so you can't do it
in perpetuity.
Once. Yeah. So that's actually what happened. But...
Yeah. So, we also then joined that bandwagon, so...
Well, it was interesting because they did also say that that also would be very hard to deep fake him in a long form project, because that was the idea, that they were like, oh, maybe he'll be in films because now he has an illness, which I can't remember what it was, but he has an illness so he can't act anymore. But they were saying that he'd be in long form projects, but then they were saying in this article that actually it'd be hard to do that because they made the deep fake with this through multiple images of, I think it was like an absurd amount of images. That's how they create like a deep fake. And they're all this processing power, and they did that just for like an ad, like a short ad. So you can do that, but to do it in like an hour or a 2 hour long movie, very exorbitant process. I did actually think that last week. I was like, very interesting. I thought it takes a lot of time and money to actually deep fake something, especially that long.
Yeah.
And it turns out I was actually right. So,
because yes, we've had big case examples of it in the Star Wars universe, where they had Peter Cushing and Carrie Fisher likelinesses come back in the Rogue One movie, as well as Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker appear in the Mandalorian TV show. And both those were deep faked.
But obviously, Disney has a lot of money.
Yeah, that's right. You need those deep pockets.
So
it seems.
If Bruce Willis still wanted to do all these B-grade films, they probably don't have the money to do it. And also, it's another thing to do like 5 seconds of Carrie Fisher.
He doesn't do things.
It's one thing to do like 5 seconds of Carrie Fisher de-aged, and another thing to do like Bruce Willis for the entire film. Maybe they could do like if he was in a film, they could do a cameo, maybe like 5. seconds or something.
Yeah, look, and feel free to SMS or post on the chats what actors you'd like to see or what movies you think Bruce Willis should appear in. There's a comment I noticed in the article talking about how Tarantino should bring back that digital likeliness to do a Zed's Dead follow-up to Pulp Fiction. In Pulp Fiction, of course, there's a line where he kills this character called Zed. Zed's Dead. So they could do a whole spin-off with that age-appropriate Bruce Willis likeness. So feel free to post your suggestions there, and we'll set up a Kickstarter to get that happening.
That's right. We will acquire the rights to AI Bruce Willis.
How expensive can that be? What I want to play now is, talking of digital likenesses, this is a story which does involve the digital likenesses of actors from the TV show Ted Lasso. Have you seen the Ted Lasso TV show?
I think I watched a couple of episodes. I haven't watched all of it, though.
So Ted Lasso is set, it's a fictional television show. It's set in, this case of this American, I think they're gridiron coaches, a coach and assistant coach, who come over to be employed in the English soccer league to run a soccer club, fictional soccer club. And it's becoming enormously popular. Character's Ted Lasso from the name, and it's become so popular now that the video game series FIFA 23 has created the likeness of both the coach, Ted Lasso, as well as the football actors, the actors playing the football people, the soccer stars, on there. So we'll listen to a quick promo for FIFA 23 and see if you can detect the telltale signs of it. And what's really interesting to me about this example of FIFA 23 and the official Ted Lasso trailer is this theory of transmedia. So transmedia is this idea that, you have a mothership property. It could be, in this case, in this case, you've got FIFA 23, the soccer video game, and then you've got Ted Lasso, so two motherships. And in a fan fiction type of way, they've both come together to birth, to create this. Because FIFA 23 has real soccer clubs in it. Basically, it's one of those kind of you get to run your soccer club and you control the characters on it. So in this one, it's interesting because they've put the fake characters in, the fake coaching that you can play, and it's transmedia because what it does is it takes it from one medium to another medium. That's the trans part. So it's taken it from live action in the case of Ted Lasso, and this is transmedia storytelling where it, as we'll hear in the trailer, it basically takes the story of the Ted Lasso series and extends that into the video game. That you're playing as the coach in this what-if scenario. What if Ted Lasso and the team that Ted Lasso coaches was in FIFA 23 and you get to create it? So let's listen now to the trailer.
He doesn't do things conventionally, but then again, none of the great managers do. He's proven he belongs in the game.
He didn't know a thing about football, but that didn't matter.
He's someone you just can't help but root for.
He knows how to block out the noise.
He's a great manager and an even better man. And if you tell him I said that, I will brain you.
A tremendous strike! Out of this world! Well, it was a risky challenge. Oh, yes! Wonderful goal!
EA Sports. I'm in the game. Oh, did I sound like the guy?
Yeah, you sounded like the guy, Ted.
I couldn't quite tell, that dialogue at the end. Did I sound like the guy? Is that the guy that does the EA Sports?
Yes, the guy who says EA Sports.
Yeah, so that would be the actor doing the voice of the EA Sports guy, I think. And then so again, another kind of storytelling thing where they have the actor playing Ted Lasso in character. reacting to him.
As if he is a real character in the real world.
Yep.
And they're making this game.
Yeah, look, and the comments on YouTube and more broadly on the internet seem very popular, positive to this, talking about how big the Ted Lasso fan base is and how excited they are to see him in the game. So it'll certainly bring in probably a lot of hype. And it's interesting, again, that this is a fictional group of characters that are brought into a simulation that's trying to simulate real clubs and real players and so forth. So it's an interesting blurring of reality and fiction there. Obviously a video game, so it's already a kind of what-if football fantasy space.
Yeah, and I wonder, because in the few episodes that I have watched, it does seem like a really funny show, really good show. So I wonder, there might be some people who do watch it who don't watch. Well, I know, because some of the people that I know who have watched it don't watch soccer or football, or however you want to call it. But, some of those people, maybe they would want to purchase the game just so they can play it.
Yeah, look, and I always wonder here where the money is going. In terms of, I would imagine it's FIFA 23 or EA Sports spending a lot of money to get the rights, the likeliness rights to Ted Lasso. So I'd imagine the exchange would be that direction, right? That this benefits EA Sports and FIFA 23 more than it benefits Ted Lasso, the show.
Yeah,
right?
I'd say so.
It's not like Ted Lasso's producers went to FIFA and said, can we give you money to put our character in your game? So I'd say, this is definitely an indication that EA Sports is probably looking to revitalize or at least to spice up that property.
Yeah, well, and apparently, I think it says it in this article, but apparently the FIFA brand or whatever is being disassociated from EA. And they're changing this into like EA Soccer League or something.
Right.
So they're changing the name because maybe they've had the deal that they have with FIFA
has expired
or something, or they're just not renewing it, or it's going to be called EA Sports FC. So FC meaning football club.
And it'd be interesting if this is only in this version that they're able to get the Ted Lasso likeliness, that the next version will disappear and this will become a hot little collector's item to have. I know that happens with like Marvel vs. Street Fighter. That Marvel license expired, and now you can't purchase that game anymore, that Marvel vs. Street Fighter game, because the license isn't there. So the world of international rights. Very excited. Well, there we go. So there you go. A bit of theory, transmedia storytelling, and FIFA 23 getting Ted Lasso. The next bit of interesting news. Well, let's jump into the ancient rocks suggest Tasmania once joined the US story. Because that blew my mind. And after last week's fake news story of the alleged asteroid that smashed into Tassie, it was a heartwarming one to actually have a real scientist saying real truths, real stories about rocks and Tasmania. So this article is talking about an international study that's turned its popular geological thought on its head after finding that Tasmania was likely to have once been attached to the west of the United States. I reckon we can petition the US to be the 52nd state.
That's true.
Based on that bit of evidence. I mean, I'd like to have the US dollar, given how strong it is at the moment.
That's true. I don't know whether we'd want some of the other stuff they've got, but,
It's so true. It's a
healthcare's good.
Place of contradiction. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Oh, you're raising some great points there. So anyway, this study is talking about how... so it's an international study, and what they were looking at was how you can find through rock structures and sand these fingerprints of the past. And so here they were looking at studying rocks in Tasmania that they found the similar fingerprints from the Grand Canyon in Arizona. And they were looking at the west coast of Tassie, right? They were looking at that rock shelves around there, cliff faces and so forth. And they found that the rocks and sand in that area, much like putting together a giant jigsaw puzzle, matched some of the similar rocks and fingerprints that they have in the Grand Canyon in Arizona. And of course, this is all traced back to this idea of like millennia ago, where there was the supercontinents, right? These enormous continental masses, and people have been trying to figure out where Tasmania was in these supercontinent spaces, right? As land masses began to move and form. It was difficult for people. It's been difficult, it seems, to locate where Tassie, in particular, was positioned, because it wasn't part of the where Australia was when it broke off. Instead, yes, it appears it was instead joined to the US.
Interesting.
The US was so close. We could, it could have been a part of the US. So a really fascinating story there about, although we're now on the opposite side of the planet to the US, nevertheless, if we go back far enough in time, Tassie was, they're saying, probably attached to the US within the supercontinent Rodinia.
Yeah, because it is so interesting, all of the different continents that were all attached to each other. And Tasmania is very unique because I think the amount of rocks, because there's different types of rocks and all that kind of stuff that you can find in Tasmania, they have pretty much every kind of rock in the world except like a handful.
Right.
So, which is very uncommon for like any other place except for maybe like, I think maybe Iceland or something. So it's very diverse in in the amount of geology and all that kind of stuff that we have here. I think we were also connected to Antarctica as well, because we've got a lot of those Antarctic rocks and stuff like that were connected along the bottom of Tasmania and all that kind of stuff. So but it is very interesting, some of the countries that you're like, well, it's all the way over there. And we're all the way over here. Like, I think maybe India. I think at some stage we were, like, connected. Like, Australia, the mainland was connected to it. Very interesting.
If you could be joined... If Tassie could be joined to a country now, what country do you reckon it would be fun for Tassie to... let's say there's a massive, weird geological formation that happens and Tassie just moves suddenly to be an island off some other country. And Japan would be fun. Get a lot of... anime and manga, some great model kits.
That's true. Or maybe even, I don't know, South America or something.
South America.
It'd be interesting, instead of like where Madagascar is, but instead it's Australia.
Yeah, I'd like that climate.
Yeah, that would be
for
really
sure.
good.
All right. Let's go for a short bluesy vibe, because I just want to play that sting again, because I think it does break up the stories. All right, you're listening to Media Mothership here on Edge Radio 99.3 FM. It's 5:24. I'm PhD Craig, joined by BA Zeke.
What up?
And we're going through the top news and events happening in the world of media and popular culture. So far, we've covered the Bruce Willis non-news story, then the Ted Lasso appearing in FIFA 23, rock formate, like being able to geologically suggest Tassie was part of America in the ancient times. The last news story I want to do before we move into our analysis of House on Haunted Hill is setting up the idea of fear. Like, why is it interesting to look at House on Haunted Hill and its fear and its way of creating fear? It's because there are real-world locations where fear happens, and we could think about that in journalism, that cliche that if it bleeds, it leads. If it's something which has some fear attached to it, an audience, a reader is more likely to engage with it, be invested with it. There's a kind of negativity bias which kind of creeps in as people are more interested in bad news stories, it seems. It reminds me a bit of research by George Grubner, where he came up with a theory called the Meanwheld Syndrome, where he basically did a survey of people that watched, this was back in the 70s, kind of media effect theory, looking at a survey of people who were heavy users of media. They watched a lot of TV, they watched a lot of movies, compared to a sample set of people that watched minimal or had minimal media engagement. And what he found was those people that had a heavy diet of media, television, news, movies, were much more concerned about the world around them. They feared it more. The Meanwheld Syndrome is this idea they saw the world as a meaner space because of popular culture, because of particularly, I guess, the dominance of some genres as well, crime stories, so forth. So his theory was that over, in a general sense, media can create a reality, particularly like, I don't know if you've ever been to America, your view of it through popular culture might be quite unrealistic, but you might see it as quite a violent space. Right? You might say, I don't want to go to America because it's violent, you see those movies and so forth. And this is what Gerbner was saying, that for a lot of people, they see the whole world around them as being quite violent, generally, not specific, but just generally, compared to those people that don't. Those people that don't engage with the media, they were saying, have a less fearful attitude towards the world around them. This story is talking about Facebook, and the title is Reporting of Minor Crimes on Facebook Distorts Perception of Safety, Research Finds. This was posted back in September 2022. Journalist was Kirsten Webster. It's a really interesting piece of work because I like how it fits into that idea of the Meanwheld Syndrome. The article's talking about how on Facebook, where there's a lot of Facebook communities that might report minor crimes which are occurring in a neighborhood, it creates a feeling amongst those people that are part of that Facebook community that they're living in an unsafe space. And what's interesting, what's the real catch here, is that, as the article says, even when statistics show the actual rate of crime is low, right? So in these cases, these areas where there are Facebook posts about, minor crimes, right? So disturbances, I'm not quite sure what minor crimes would be counted as, but nevertheless, there's a concern in that research those people have that they're living in an unsafe neighborhood, even though statistically crime is considered very, very low in that space. But the way in which, I guess, those Facebook communities are amplifying a sense of fear and a kind of dominant discourse appears, has led these people to feel that they're living in an unsafe space. So Dr. Zanoff from University of Queensland says, the chatter on these pages can create an impression of criminal or deviant behaviors that really are reports of minor incidences. So it can be catastrophized somewhat from these reports. And they've interviewed the police in this, and the police saying, yeah, it is, it's odd that the crimes in those locations are very, very low. And the police are in an interesting spot because they're saying, look, we really want people in the public to report concerns. And, the Gold Coast Police Superintendent Jeff Sheldon is quoted as saying, we thrive on our relationship with the public and their ability to contact us and give us information we need to help keep them safe, right? So he's saying, it's good, but yeah, it's not reflected in the stats. And we have this other guy, Australian criminal lawyer Bill Potts, saying that the problem with this, though, is it can lead to what he's referring to as virtual vigilantism. Vigilantism. And we've seen similar things, like I know in the Boston bombing many years back, there was the case of Reddit trying to help find who was the bomber by information that the police were leaving about the backpack, right? There was information about the backpack. So they began looking through, and they thought they'd found the person. They had the same backpack. They'd looked at posts and so forth. They were wrong, and it led to very bad consequences for that guy. Because, it was that vigilantism. There was a concern that was raised. There was an overreaction. The people on the community themselves decided they'd take action, and it led to them getting the wrong person.
Yeah, and I think there was a similar case, I think, last year when we were still doing lockdowns for COVID. And it's when we had that, snap lockdown in Tassie, and then they hadn't published a photo, they hadn't published a name or anything like that, but on social media they already had, names going around, photos going around, attributing blame already to someone. Obviously, there was a lot of hate because people were like, what the hell, we haven't had lockdowns, and because in Tassie we hadn't had lockdowns in pretty much ever really throughout the entire period, and they were like, this person right here is to blame, and it's like, well, we don't know that yet.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of a witch hunt going on.
And look, ultimately, I think, as they flag in this story, that the real concern is, there's real cost here in terms of the damage this can do to a person unfairly accused of doing something wrong via social media. And that can, of course, they do have recourse for defamation to say that their identity, their reputation has been besmirched or damaged because of the information that had been posted on social media. So there's a real risk there of people who are posting on social media, particularly when it comes to the level of accusing and naming particular people, that they could find themselves in hot water around defamation. So they've interviewed here a lecturer from Griffith University Law School who says, a lot of people are opening themselves up to a very real risk of liability, and that can range into tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. All right, and that's that defamation concern. Once you start accusing individuals of doing things and you're wrong, that person can.
Yeah,
can
and
seek
I think they were saying as well here that Facebook, the actual administrators of groups, if it's posted in groups, could be liable for expensive defamation claims. And I assume that's also if they're not the ones who have even posted it, but because they have the group and they're facilitating it, they're meant to be an admin of that group. So if they don't act on that, they could be liable for it as well. So you don't even have to say anything. You can just be like, oh, I just own the group or whatever. I didn't say anything. It's like, doesn't matter because you're the admin of it. Yeah,
you really need to make sure that you get good training when you're going to do any media work, which is why in Edge Radio we have great training.
That's right. Who does this great training, Craig?
Yeah, they're very spokesperson for the show. I do the training here on Edge Radio. In fact, we'll be doing another training session the first 2 weeks of November. We're going to do them Sundays this time.
Sundays, interesting. So we've had, when I did it was Wednesdays. The previous ones that you just did were Mondays, I think. And now you go on to Sundays. Yeah, doing the whole week. And if you are curious about defamation, come along to those training sessions. They're a lot of fun. We'll post some information up on the Edge Radio website. Well, that's the news for this week. Let's go to a bit of old news now from Taspop South. We played nearly all of our Vox Pops. We have one last Vox Pop left to play from Deanna, who was the previous president of Taspop. So, Zeke, play it.
If you could give me your name and the description of your fantastic cosplay.
My name is Deanna. I'm kind of not really cosplaying because I actually got sick a few weeks ago, so I couldn't finish it. So I'm just here in my casual geek clothes at the moment.
What were you going to cosplay?
I was going to cosplay as one of the guys from a multiplayer first-person horror shooter called GTFO.
Wow. Well, in the future, we'll have to see that unveiled. Okay, so what is the first pop culture thing that comes into your head right now?
First pop culture thing, as in like the very first thing that popped into my head, it was the show that got me into popular culture, which was Neon Genesis Evangelion. That was like the first anime that I watched basically, and I've been obsessed with pop culture since. So that was my sinkhole.
What's been the biggest surprise that you've had so far at the festival?
Biggest surprise? Probably the space. I'm really enjoying the space. But I think just from my own personal anxiety things, just having it a bit more spread out, I think would have utilized the space a lot more and made it feel safer. Other than that, I think it's been great. That was the only thing that kind of caught me by surprise. Yeah. Otherwise, it feels like a whole convention at home type of thing. Yeah.
And last question, bit of a trick question. Is there any Tasmanian pop culture?
Tasmanian pop culture. Oh my god. Yes, there's absolutely Tasmanian pop culture. We've got our own anime studios, game studios. We have like a huge, massive amount of independent artists as well. I mean, we have our own memes, but most of that's like either focused against ourselves or against the mainland. I don't know how much of that would count, but I would assume it would. Tasmania's absolutely full to the brim with popular culture, like in its bones. Yeah.
We have our own memes?
We have our own memes, yeah. Like, it's mostly like, I don't know, like plays on like not the two-headed sheep memes, but you know what I'm saying? Like that kind of like grounded Australian culture type of thing. How Tasmanians are like 4 seasons in 1 day, yeah, whatever, and mainlanders are like 4 seasons in 1 week, it's the end of the world. That kind of thing, definitely.
That is spot on. That's a clever answer. I like that. Any final thoughts?
I mean, it's good to see that it's still going. I am really grateful for the fact that they were considerate enough to make it a masked event, and I think they have a lot of room to grow in this venue if they continue to come back here. Yeah.
Well, as the next president, right, of the Tas convention space, yeah, this must feel nice that it's carried over.
To actually view it as an attendee and have like no investment of what's going on behind it it's different. I'm kind of like familiar with that, attending mainland conventions, but to actually be here in Tasmania, attending a TasPop convention without knowing anything that's happening behind the scenes, without having to know anything that's happening behind the scenes, but you still see the same faces. You still see like if they're not working as committee anymore, they're here as attendees, and we're still seeing attendees and committee working together to help each other out for anything that's happening, whether it's like, hey, do you mind watching my stall for me while I go to the toilet? Sure, mate. Yeah, that's fine. Or, hey, do you mind just like keeping an eye on this while I go run something in the back stock room? Yeah, sure, that's fine. Like, it's a very close-knit community that I don't think you could see on the mainland at all. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dee. That's a great way to wrap things up for the day. Thanks again.
Not a worries. Good to see you.
Hi, you're listening to Media Mothership here on Edge Radio 99.3 FM. Friday, the 7th of October, it's 5:38 p.m. And I'm PhD Craig, joined by B.A. Zeek.
Hello.
Cool, as always. So that was Deanna from TasPop, which we had the real fortune of visiting and participating in a few weeks back, talking about that pop culture event. Now, let's look at the next 5 minutes of House on Haunted Hill, 1959, starring Vincent Price. A little bit of trivia before we start. Zeke, did you know The Simpsons has made 2 references to House on Haunted Hill?
I knew that they did at least one. I didn't know it was 2.
Yeah, 1994, they did the episode Homer Loves Flanders, where the episode ends with the Simpsons spending the night in Homer's great-uncle Boris's house, which is haunted and has recently inherited. The origin of this archetypal story is the plot of the film House on Haunted Hill, right? So basically, we're talking about stories where the Simpsons have had to stay in a house that's haunted, which is the premise of House on Haunted Hill. Mm-hmm. The second one was 96, called Bart the Fink, and at the beginning of the episode, the Simpsons spend a night in a haunted house in order to receive inheritance money from their dead aunt. The origin, again, of this show. So, yeah, there you go. Yeah. So this has made quite a bit of impact in the pop culture psyche from 59. It has been remade once. Jeffrey Robinson, he was King's Speech, the Jeffrey Shine.
I can't remember.
The actor? Gosh, dang it. Anyway, it's not this movie. So it has made a bit of a splash. So in this next 5 minutes, I don't think any of the scenes that we're looking at here have been referenced on The Simpsons, though. So we're looking at 3 scenes in this scene. In this 5-minute section. The first scene I'm calling the ceiling blood stain, then the acid basement, and finally, why did you come?
Yeah.
Scene. Let's play a little bit of... we'll play a few seconds setting up the blood ceiling one.
See that stain? blood. A young girl was killed here. And whatever got her wasn't human. Don't stand there. What do you mean? Where?
It's a great scene. I love it because he goes, "Don't stand there," right? And then even though this is like basically a haunted house fun ride, right? Because I'm like, they don't talk about the fact that what they're experiencing here is really weird, right? If you've been invited to this house, you're going to get all this money if you can stay the night. And you've got this guy that knows all the spooky stories about the murders that happened in the house. So he takes you to a spot, and you see a stain on the ceiling, and then the guy says, "Don't stand there." And you go, "Why not?" And then your hand suddenly gets all this red substance on it.
Red stuff. And they go, "Oh, maybe it's just a leak in the roof."
That's what they do. Yeah. They do. So they pass it away as that. You know, and I got to admit, we know we're watching a horror movie, so we're thinking, why don't they know they're in a horror movie? They don't know they're in a horror movie. There's no postmodernism in 1959 in this film. So all the characters are behaving as if there are rational explanations. They don't believe in ghosts. So, this scene, like the lady holds her hand out, and we see close up of the hand with the kind of liquid substance dripping on it. That must be doing a lot of damage if it's dripping that much.
Yeah, a few pipes loose in the house.
And Vincent Price, who owns the house, seems oblivious to this.
Yeah, I don't know.
Does he own it, or has he just rented it? And
he's rented it.
Just rented it. Yeah.
What was his name? I can't remember his name, but he is the owner of the house.
Right. Pritchard. Right. Okay. Yeah. So then they go down to the basement or the cellar with a lot of wine, and it turns out he gives this wonderful, nice story about the previous owner who'd killed everyone, it seems, of this house, had a hobby of just making wine. Right? Just making wine. But his wife hated that hobby, and so he made an acid pit and threw her in it.
Yep.
Is that how did he get the acid?
That's what they said, I believe.
It's acid pit, yeah. Acid pit, and it basically sets up a kind of heightened terror moment. So what we're looking at here is we've had two terror moments, right? The interesting one, the blood stain, right? You're watching a horror movie, you see the blood stain, you see red, or not red, black and white film, but you see it on the hand, and you're thinking, oh, revulsion scene, but they don't act revolted. Instead, they say it's just leaky pipes. So that was terror, but recovery. Right? So it was a terror scene where he hypes it up with the story, and he goes, "Don't stand there." But instead of a payoff being revulsion, with the characters acting like, "Oh my God, I got blood on my hand," they go, leaky pipes. Here, there's a setup of a second terror scene where he reveals the acid bath, right? And he tells that the wife got put in there, and a skeleton was found. And one of the characters nearly falls in it. And then to prove it, he gets a rat trap with a rat in it. And he puts the rat in it, and you see all this kind of bubbling, and then you see the skeleton.
That was great. I love when I was watching that scene, I was like waiting for the skeleton's going to come up, right? And then it did, and it was like, whoosh, and it didn't disappoint. It
was a real payoff. And that was a proper terror to revulsion payoff, because then we get the character actually acting in revulsion. The one of the female characters puts the hand on the mouth and has this really kind of disgusted look on her face as the skeleton floats up to the surface of revulsion. All the other characters are pretty cool about it. It's like, that's a bit much to demonstrate that. Bit weird. There's a acid bath there. That's quick acting.
Yeah, I think, and that's what he even said. Oh yeah, after she almost fell in, and then he was like, "Oh, good thing that she didn't fall in." And they were like, "Wait, there's acid still in there?" And he's like,
"There is. Let me show you with this rat." Yeah, so it kind of builds it up. It's a good scene. What's really interesting to me is the third scene, right, which is just meant to be recovery. So we've had a terror revulsion move. And then the rest of this plays out as recovery, where the other four characters leave the room, and we're left with two characters who don't know each other, but the guy kind of just pushes the door closed on this woman who doesn't know him, and that's creepy. For me, I'm thinking, this is like 1959 creepy male kind of like misogyny, sexism. So what he does then is he does all this mansplaining about, like, why are you here? Why did you come? Right? What's really interesting to me about this scene, and I'll play it, is that, he asks why she came, and I just love his reaction to it. All right, so we'll play a bit of the scene leading up to her explanation of why she came. And I'm playing it because I think there's a revulsion moment to how I felt towards the patriarchy at this point.
To this party. No. I'm going.
So so he slams the door. No, don't go. No, don't go. Creepy move. I'd scream. Then he starts asking why you're here. Let's play this.
I mean, what did he tell you?
Mr. Lawrence said everybody'd get $10,000.
But he didn't say anything about being locked in.
No.
He just made a deal with me on the phone, but nothing about having to stay.
Aren't you going to stay?
If I don't, I lose $10,000.
I'm going to stay, too. $10,000.
Yeah. You believe in ghosts?
I don't know.
Well, I agree with what that doc says. You can spook yourself. I've done it in planes. Seen things that weren't really there. Or were they? What are you going to do with your $10,000? If we get it.
What do you mean, if we get it? Won't he pay us if we stay?
Ah, sure he will. 10,000 is no more to him than a nickel is to us.
We were in an automobile accident. Now I'm the only one in the family who can make any money.
Boy, I've never seen so many doors.
All right, so she tells him this sad story. I was in an automobile accident, right? ... We assume the husband died in patriarchal 1959 America. That means, she's now struggling to make ends meet, right? So she needs that money. His reaction is, this room has a lot of doors.
Yeah. No,
and he doesn't bring it up. And he has this flat expression on his face, like a serial murderer, like, you've just told me a very sad story. I'm not going to say, that's sad.
Yeah, what's very sad.
He just goes off about how many doors there are, and then he tries to open up all the doors.
Yeah, I was watching it now, because they've kind of hinted towards some sort of, I guess, interest between, or at least from, like, him to her or something, but then he completely... She just, like, opens up to him, or whatever, I guess. And he sort of just goes like, wow, there's a lot of doors here.
That's right. Like, he's just shocking in terms of, A, not reading the signs of, and B, he was the one that slammed the door on her to basically... see if, much like in a Survivor, like I'm thinking maybe this is like the Survivor reality show, right? Can we make a deal with each other to look after each other? Which normally, normal human conversation would include, a bit of disclosure, bit of sympathy, hearing. This is a classic guy. He's not listening. It's all just, mansplaining and what he wants to do. And gee, there's a lot of doors in this room.
Yeah. And then he goes down a door and
that's it. That's the top of the 20.
That's the top of the 20?
Yeah, he disappears through that door. It's such a weird scene because of that.
Yeah, it is pretty weird. I don't know.
I was in an automobile accident. I really need that money.
And then just nothing.
No, nothing. Like not even a pause, because he then immediately says, there's a lot of doors in this room.
Yeah, especially what did he want out of that? I don't know. It just strikes me as odd. Does he not want, like, I don't know.
Maybe, yeah, like, if it was Survivor reality TV, there'd be a kind of, you and I should look after each other, right? Because they don't know, they're all strangers, and this is basically, I'm now going to say the genre this could move into is a Survivor genre, right? Where you got to start making deals.
Yeah.
Right? If I'm going to enroll in the next season of Survivor Tasmania, this is not a good movie to get examples from.
No.
Yeah. But maybe that's 1959.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just 1959 roles. It's kind of
unemotional.
If
anything, I think it's an anti-Survivor movie because then he disappears in a door. And
That's what happens.
And the door just sort of shuts.
Yeah, comically. All right, well, that's been Media Mothership for another week. What did you think of that 5 minutes? What's your terror level like?
There was nothing.
Bloodstained,
it was
rat,
just
skeleton.
Watching. Yeah, no. I mean, I found that quite. Oh, maybe not funny, but like, maybe it was funny. I was expecting exactly what the rat skeleton would look like. It looked like a little plastic.
That's right.
You know, like what you would think a rat skeleton would look like. It was very funny. So maybe just funny is where I was throughout that.
Yeah, unintentional humor. Love it, unintentional humor in horror movies. All right. Well, thank you, B.A. Zeke. This has been PhD Craig for another week. Coming up next, we have You Can't Sit Down by Adrian. Some great music tunes ahead. Keep listening to Edge Radio 99.3 FM.
That's right. You're listening to Foolish by Jelani Blackman.